This, yeah, I mean, this is clearly the most interesting bike that I've reviewed on the channel, and really it's hard to know where to start. It's like if a smartphone and a commuter bike had a child, and that child was made out of carbon fiber and endorsed by Hall of Fame NBA legend Tracy McGrady. Yeah, let's unpack that. Okay, so this is the Urtopia carbon e-bike, and I've been riding it around for a few weeks now. Now this bike is so packed with technology and features, it's hard to treat it like a bike review and not a tech gadget review. Now, not surprisingly, all of the reviews on this bike are by tech channels. So I'll do my best to just briefly highlight all the tech, but ultimately review the bike itself and try and offer some insights on which features are actually useful and which seem, well, just kind of gimmicky. So the frame is made from carbon fiber, which all the reviews rave about, but as cyclists, we know that carbon fiber is graded, and not all carbon parts are created equal. Now this frame, fork, handlebars, and the integrated stem, as well as the seat posts, are all carbon, and while I'm not a carbon expert, it does seem to be of decent quality at a superficial level. Now the bike is claimed to be lightweight at 30 pounds. However, on my scale, the bike comes in at 33.8 pounds, which is still actually reasonably light for a full-size bike like this. So interestingly, the frame is claimed to have been designed by Mathis Heller, who is an award-winning automotive designer from Germany who worked on the design of the BMW I series. Now I think the thought was to place a large emphasis on design and create something unique and reflective of the company's vision. Now the result is what you see here. Clean lines and a futuristic look, but as a cyclist, it becomes pretty clear that perhaps a co-designer with a cycling background should maybe have been consulted. Now, most notably, the lack of a seat tube that connects to the bottom bracket means that the integrated seat post can only slide a couple of inches up and down, and cutting the seat post is not really an option since the integrated brake light and turn signal are molded right into the post. Now, this all means that the suggested minimum height for a cyclist is 5'7", which, if you ask me, kind of excludes like half of the adult population. Also, the claimed maximum weight is 240 pounds for the rider plus any cargo they're carrying, which again seems okay for most, but I imagine a full-length seat tube would increase this figure by a lot. Now, for those of us who make the height requirement by however small a margin, it means that we can ride the bike, but the other thing to consider is that the handlebar position is completely fixed. The integrated stem and bar is really clean looking, but you have no adjustment for stack or reach, which as a cyclist is pretty key. Now I suppose that the counter argument here is that the consumer of this bike is probably mostly looking to do some urban commuting and maybe some light recreation, and so perfect bike fit may not be a priority. Anyways, so that's the frame set. Now this of course is an e-bike, so it's probably a good idea to mention the driveline. Now like most e-bikes, this bike is pedal assist, so there's no throttle, but it's powered by a rear hub motor that puts out 250 watts with assistance up to 20 miles an hour, which I think is a government restriction in the US. And the battery is based on genuine Samsung lithium-ion cells and has a capacity of 360 watt-hours, coming to a full charge in about 2.5 hours, and claims to offer a range of 80 miles on eco mode. Now you can charge the battery while it's secured in the frame, so you basically never need to remove the battery, but you can if you need to replace it for whatever reason. Now the pedal assist feature is based on a torque sensor rather than a cadence sensor, which means that power delivery is actually really smooth and seamless. Now this is one of the tech features on this bike that I appreciate, and it makes the bike really easy and natural to ride. There's also some kind of clutch built into the driveline, which allows you to essentially ride the bike disengaged from the power unit like a normal pedal bike in the case that you totally run out of battery or just want to get some more exercise. Now, it uses a Gates carbon belt drive system, which is meant to be really smooth and durable, requiring no maintenance for a claimed 30,000 kilometers, which may very well mean you never need to service the drivetrain for the life of the bike. Now, I would argue that this is another appropriate application of technology, and I can see a daily commuter appreciating the lack of a greasy chain that needs to be periodically replaced. Now, for whatever reason, if you do actually need to replace the belt, it is possible, but it's not trivial, as you'll need to actually open the rear triangle of the frame via this removable coupler on the drive side seat stay. Now the belt drive also prescribes the drivetrain to a single speed, which again is mostly fine for commuters, but it also means it's not really meant for steep hills as the hub motor can only do so much. Now, I also found that you do spin out pretty quickly as you reach the upper end of the pedal assist range, which isn't a huge deal. It just means that you can't pedal that much faster than the assist allows. Now, the brakes are no-name hydraulic discs with 160mm rotors, and they seem to work pretty well. Nothing super noteworthy there, but at minimum, it's nice to know that they're mineral oil brakes as opposed to the more caustic dot fluid. Okay, so on to the tech. Now, the smart integrated handlebar is kind of the crown jewel of this bike and is what all the tech reviews focus on. A prominent LED dot matrix is the centerpiece and offers a rider a clear view of the current speed, current pedal assist level, and the battery life. Now, pedal assist modes are changed by clicking up or down on the left arrow pad, and the left and the right arrows trigger the turn signal, which project an arrow down onto the ground, so in theory, cars can see you better. But in my experience, they're just not quite bright enough to see unless you're really riding in the dark, in which case I think you might be better served by using your own super bright rear flasher. Now, the button on the right-hand side triggers the horn, which is kind of a neat feature on an urban commuter. It seems sufficiently loud to be heard by people ahead of you, but I haven't had much need for it in practice. Now, the button actually doubles as a fingerprint scanner and will unlock the bike when the owner scans a thumbprint. Now, this is definitely a futuristic feature on a bike, but I actually personally wasn't able to get the reader to recognize my fingerprint every time, and so I generally fell back on a Bluetooth connection from my cell phone to unlock the bike. Which, yes, there is a mobile app that accompanies the bike, and allows you to do several things, including lock and unlock the bike, set the different tones for the horn, set the screen brightness, adjust the haptic feedback level, update firmware, and a bunch of other ride tracking features that take advantage of the onboard GPS. Now, it's worth mentioning that the whole reason that there's a lock feature is that the pedal assist won't engage unless the bike is unlocked. But my thought on that is that a thief has no way of knowing that, and so it doesn't seem like a true theft deterrent. Now, the other thing that's advertised is the anti-theft tech built into the bike. Now, what this means is that if the bike is in locked mode, onboard gyroscope and accelerometers will detect if the bike is being moved, presumably by a thief, and it will sound an audible noise and the handlebars will vibrate. Now, I'm really not sure how many thieves this will actually deter. If the bike isn't locked up, there's literally nothing stopping someone from walking away with it. Now, when riding the bike, the experience is actually very pleasant. Despite all the extra tech, some of which seems a little bit excessive, the bike does actually ride pretty well. Power delivery is really smooth, and you can actually feel the difference in all the power assist modes. Pedaling with no assistance isn't a huge chore, and it rides just like a typical commuter bike. Now, the tires are super stiff and kind of harsh, but I think that's precisely the trade-off for durability, which the company clearly prioritized over road feel and suppleness. And I suppose that makes sense. I mean, you definitely don't want to get a flat tire, especially in the rear on your way to work. That's a really fun bike to ride. It's fast, smooth, and it's pretty comfortable. I will say that aside from adjusting the pedal assist levels from time to time, I really didn't use many of the other features. I forgot to mention that there's a voice command function on the smart bar, which allows you to do things like change the assist level and turn on and off the headlights, which is cool, but in my opinion is perhaps the most gimmicky feature overall. Now, you can control any of those things using the controls on the handlebars, and I really didn't see a need for the voice control. Now, as far as the range, I never actually did an 80-mile ride on it, so I can't speak to their claim of 80 miles. And the rides that I was doing were all generally less than 10 miles. I will say that I had the bike in turbo mode, like a lot, because frankly it's the most fun, but it does seem to drain the battery pretty quickly, which is to be expected. Now, while I never fully killed the battery, I'd imagine that on full turbo mode and moderately hilly terrain, I wouldn't expect to get much more than 15 or 20 miles on a full charge. Now, I have to say that I really appreciate the company's energy and vision, and I think this bike represents thousands of hours of dedication and hard work. I mean, they're clearly trying to redefine what an e-bike can be, and they're forward thinking in a lot of ways. Now, I do think that maybe they went a bit heavy on the tech, and consequently the actual bike part of the bike became more of an afterthought. Now, thankfully, it's a pretty simple single-speed design, and it does ride pretty well. Now, I also think that the marketing for this bike is one of the strangest things that I've seen in the industry. In a video interview by the designer, the emphasis was on a vision of a green, renewable utopia, which is claimed to be symbolized by the Mobius strip, which ultimately served as a central design element. Kind of strange, but I guess I follow. But then all the reviews are by tech media outlets like Engadget and TechCrunch, and not environmentalists, which seems a little bit dissonant. And then the part that really gave me a little bit of pause was the random celebrity endorsements. You have an Olympic kayaker, a former NFL player, a yoga instructor, and for some reason NBA legend and Hall of Famer Tracy McGrady, all seemingly reading from scripts and promoting the bike. Now, I got nothing against T-Mac. He was a great basketball player in his prime, but why is he telling me that the Urtopia bike is the bike of the future? Just doesn't feel like a cohesive marketing strategy. Now, in mid-2022, the bike retails for $2,800 US, which is pretty steep, but it's not that far off the average for a high-end e-bike. I think the company is hoping the allure of all that extra tech will sway consumers into spending the extra cash, which I think is valid. There are a ton of features built into this bike, and some may appreciate them more than I do. But for me, an everyday cyclist who is really critical of the actual bike element, most of those extra features to me just seem a little bit gimmicky. Now in the future, I'd love to see a more standard frame design that offers riders more adjustability, along with perhaps a few less features that don't require a fingerprint scanner or Bluetooth connection to a smartphone just to get the bike going. Again, the bike itself and the pedal assist functionality are pretty good, but I'd prefer to spend a little less money and get a little bit more stripped down version of this bike if it were an option. All right, well that's gonna do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's kind of a departure from a typical bike sauce video, but I did think it was interesting enough to ride for a few weeks and put together a review video. So that's saying something. I'm not sure what, but you know, something. Anyways, thanks for watching, and thanks again for subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.